Early December brought the first heavy snow to Fairwood Pines, a suburban enclave with gently winding streets, tidy two-story houses, and an overbearing HOA. Twinkling holiday lights adorned rooftops, while kids buzzed with excitement for winter break. Crescent Court, a cul-de-sac near the neighborhood's southern edge, had become the stomping ground for a tight-knit bunch of children. They built snowmen in front lawns, sled on modest backyard slopes, and dreamt of more elaborate winter fun. For years, families in Fairwood Pines accepted that the HOA regulated exterior paint colors, mailbox designs, and even how holiday lights should be arranged. Yet rarely did these rules hamper the simple joys children found in the snow. This winter, a group of imaginative kids would push that boundary, unwittingly drawing the ire of the neighborhood's self-appointed enforcer, a woman known as Brenda Ainsworth but whispered about as Karen. Crescent Court's central area, a wide, slightly sunken portion of the cul-de-sac, held a special allure. With plowed snow piled around its edges, the kids noticed how water collected and froze. A spark ignited among them. Could we make an ice rink here? They suspected no rule explicitly forbade turning the cul-de-sac into a miniature skating patch. But they had yet to meet Karen's brand of strictness. As the snow glistened and the temperature dropped, the kids' plan took shape. They'd gather hoses, fill the dip in the asphalt with water, let it freeze overnight, and skate the next day. None could have predicted how this small act of winter creativity would spark a neighborhood-wide drama, culminating in an unexpected show of unity. Brenda Karen Ainsworth had lived in Fairwood Pines for nearly a year. A middle-aged woman with meticulously styled hair and a perpetually furrowed brow, she held a seat on the HOA Compliance Committee. From that platform, she championed maintaining aesthetic excellence, which often meant issuing citation letters for minor infractions. Lawn ornaments, fence decorations, even the color of front doors. Nothing escaped her scrutiny. Karen watched Crescent Court's children with a mix of impatience and suspicion. She believed their rowdy laughter disrupted the serene, uniform environment she championed. She already disliked that some residents let kids chalk the sidewalks or store hockey nets near the curb. So when rumors reached her that the cul-de-sac might be used as an ice rink, she bristled. That evening, she ventured onto Crescent Court. Through a swirl of snow, she spotted a ring of children with plastic buckets, pouring water into a shallow depression. Laughing parents supervised, clearly complicit. Karen's lips tightened. She approached a father, James Patterson, who was hauling a garden hose from his front yard. "Excuse me," she said sternly. "What do you think you're doing?" James explained how the kids hoped to create a small patch of ice for skating. Karen's eyes narrowed. "Crescent Court is public roadway, not a personal playground," she snapped. "This is hardly safe or compliant with our guidelines. Water on asphalt can cause damage." James maintained a polite smile. "We'll be careful. It's just some winter fun, Ms. Ainsworth. The kids can't get to the official rink across town easily. If it's a problem, we can address it, but it's no more hazardous than the street itself iced over." Karen marched off, ignoring his attempt at reason. She intended to bring the matter to the HOA board, certain they'd back her. But in the coming days, she'd find the children's determination and the neighborhood spirit far stronger than her petty rulebook. Overnight, temperatures plunged well below freezing, turning the thin layer of water into a sheet of ice. The next morning, children woke early, excitement shining on their faces. Bundled in coats and scarves, they rushed to Crescent Court. Their homemade rink, though modest, about 20 feet across, gleamed like a glass mirror. The asphalt's slight concavity ensured the water remained pooled, forming a surprisingly smooth surface. Timmy, a 7-year-old boy on wobbly skates, tested it first, gingerly sliding across the ice. A triumphant grin spread across his face. Soon, half a dozen kids were gliding around, giggling whenever they lost balance. Parents stood watch, ensuring no one strayed too close to parked cars. The crisp winter air filled with the scraping of skate blades and children's excited squeals. Word spread quickly among neighbors. Some teens arrived with hockey sticks, shooting a puck across the rink. Others just wanted to slide in boots. A sense of old-fashioned winter magic descended on Crescent Court. People took photos, remarking how the kids had found a creative way to enjoy the cold weather without traveling to the expensive downtown arena. Karen, peering through her living room window, saw the group's delight and scowled. She believed the noise and hubbub clashed with Fairwood Pines' quiet elegance. Worse, she worried about liability. If anyone got injured, the HOA might face complaints. She decided to expedite her formal complaint at the board meeting. Meanwhile, the joyous laughter outside grated on her nerves. She resolved to escalate matters herself if official channels delayed action. Just as the kids' homemade rink gained popularity, an ominous letter appeared in mailboxes on Crescent Court, bearing the HOA insignia. It read in part, "Notice of possible violation. Residents of Crescent Court. It has come to our attention that certain individuals are intentionally flooding the cul-de-sac to create an ice rink. This may conflict with HOA guidelines and local safety codes. We urge those responsible to cease such activities immediately or face potential fines and legal liability for property damage or personal injury." Although the letter wasn't signed by name, it dripped with formal language that suggested Karen's handiwork. The parents, unyielding in their desire to let the children skate, gathered on a Saturday evening to discuss. Some worried about the threat of fines. Others believed the HOA had no real grounds. After all, the cul-de-sac was public property maintained by the city, not exclusively under HOA domain. During this impromptu sidewalk meeting, a grandmotherly resident, Martha Rhodes, pointed out an interesting clause in the HOA bylaws. She recalled a seasonal recreational use mention, allowing short-term personal structures like temporary basketball nets or small pools if they didn't permanently alter common areas. If they can't ban a toddler's inflatable pool on a front lawn, can they really ban a seasonal patch of ice? She asked. That snippet emboldened the group. Still, the letter's tone rattled them. They decided to keep the rink going, but remain watchful for further pushback. More parents volunteered to supervise daily, ensuring no accidents. They also began filming how carefully children used the rink, hoping to show no liability risk existed. Everyone suspected Karen was behind the note, and so they braced for her next move. Karen, dissatisfied with bureaucratic delays, took matters into her own hands. Late one frigid night, after the neighborhood lights dimmed, she slipped out of her house carrying a large bag of rock salt. Her logic was simple. If the kids had no ice to skate on, they'd have to stop. She reasoned it was a public service, preventing possible injuries. In truth, it was sabotage. Creeping onto Crescent Court, she tore open the bag and scattered salt along the rink surface. The crystals glistened under the faint moonlight. Karen spread them thoroughly, ensuring that by morning, the top layer of ice would turn slushy or melt. Each handful she tossed felt like an act of retribution against the noise, the bright lights of children's laughter, and the perceived challenge to her authority. She finished quickly, anxious to avoid detection. Though the moon was out, no neighbors seemed awake. Heart pounding, she hustled back to her home, convinced she'd delivered a decisive blow. The kids would find their rink ruined, and that would be that. She did not consider that the meltdown she triggered would be short-lived, and the fallout would push the community to rally in unexpected ways. Dawn broke with a damp chill. The children bounded outside, eager for another day on their makeshift ice. But they discovered a disaster. The rink's once smooth surface was riddled with watery patches and slush, scarred by irregular spots where salt had melted the ice. Some areas had refrozen into jagged lumps. Skates could no longer glide safely across the battered patch. Timmy, tears in his eyes, asked, "Why is it all messed up?" One of the older kids, checking footprints around the cul-de-sac, noticed the grains of rock salt embedded in the half-melted ice. It was clearly deliberate. Someone had gone out of their way to sabotage their little winter haven. The sense of heartbreak among the children was matched by the fury of their parents. James Patterson led a group of neighbors in collecting evidence. Photos of the salt remnants, the footprints. Rumors flew. "I bet Karen did it. She's always complaining. Who else would do something so spiteful?" They had no direct proof, but all signs pointed to her. People seethed that someone could so callously destroy the children's winter joy. That afternoon, the parents huddled again. They refused to be beaten by such pettiness. Brainstorming ensued. If a small patch of ice in the cul-de-sac was too vulnerable to sabotage, perhaps they should build something more robust. A father, Dave Rosen, mused about contacting local sponsors or a sports store that might donate equipment. Another suggested approaching the HOA with a formal plan under community recreational improvements, making it official so sabotage would be punishable. The seeds of a bigger, better rink took root. At dusk, the parents convened in Dave Rosen's garage to blueprint an ambitious project. They aimed to upgrade from a rudimentary ice patch to a mini, professional-grade rink. Drawing on experiences from public skating arenas, they discussed installing boards around the perimeter for safety, a liner to prevent water seepage, and possibly even overhead lighting for evening use. A few parents had experience in carpentry or metalwork, volunteering to help build basic frames. Lisa Kim, a mother who worked in marketing, offered to approach local businesses for sponsorship. Maybe a sporting goods store or a small hockey brand might donate or discount materials. Another neighbor, Linda Parker, who had once worked in city parks, stressed the importance of meeting safety standards, ensuring stable boards, sealed surfaces, and some manner of protective barrier near the street. They recognized the cost might be significant. If we pool resources, we might scrape by, Dave said, but a sponsor or two could lighten the load. The idea gained traction quickly. They also planned to request an official permit from the HOA for a temporary winter recreation structure. With Karen's sabotage fresh in their minds, they wanted to ensure the project was bulletproof. They believed that if it was legitimate and widely supported, Karen's meddling would be powerless. The group parted that night brimming with purpose. The kids, after an initial heartbreak, perked up at the promise of a real mini-rink. Meanwhile, an undercurrent of defiance fueled the adults. If Karen thought salting the ice would end their fun, she had only spurred them to dream bigger. The following week, the parents officially presented their plan to the HOA board. They arrived at the monthly meeting armed with sketches of the proposed rink, a short wall system around the cul-de-sac center, a heavy-duty plastic liner to hold water, optional LED lights for safe evening skating, and even small benches for putting on skates. They invoked the bylaw about community recreational improvements, suggesting the rink be recognized as a neighborhood amenity, like a tennis court or a playground. Most board members were intrigued, if slightly skeptical. The question of liability arose, but the parents pointed out they'd require parental supervision, waivers if needed, and standard disclaimers. They'd also place caution signs. Another board member noted that a well-supervised structure might be safer than an unsupervised patch of ice. Some recognized the PR benefit, an HOA project that fosters community spirit. With pictures of the children's excitement and referencing the sabotage incident, the parents garnered sympathy. Karen, perched at the board table, unleashed a barrage of objections. This is excessive. We have to think about noise, potential property damage, unsightly boards. Our quiet streets will turn into a carnival. She glared at the parents, but her colleagues seemed less swayed than usual. President Margaret Clark calmly responded, "Ms. Ainsworth, the children want to skate. If we regulate it properly, we can prevent accidents. The proposal is thorough. The board, as a group, must weigh community benefit versus inconvenience." She called for a preliminary vote on whether to continue discussions. By a solid margin, 6-1, the board agreed to explore the mini-rink concept. Karen's scowl deepened, but she was outnumbered. The momentum lay with the determined families. True to her promise, Lisa Kim contacted various local businesses. After multiple calls, she struck gold with Blue Line Sports, a hockey equipment retailer with a philanthropic streak. The store's regional manager, charmed by the story of children's ice sabotage, offered to donate half the materials for building boards, along with discount pricing on a heavy-duty liner and netting. They wanted their logo displayed on a rink banner in return, a fair trade that excited the parents. Meanwhile, a local hardware store pitched in with free lumber scraps. Buoyed by this support, The families began collecting funds for the rest of the costs: LED lights, mounting poles, some basic seating. They launched a small crowdfunding page within the neighborhood and beyond, raising enough to cover the remainder. Word spread quickly, and soon the community pitched in, from retired residents offering to help with manual labor to teenagers volunteering to paint the boards. As the final budget took shape, the parents realized they might even afford a modest set of safety rails around the perimeter, ensuring no skaters slid dangerously onto the road. The proposed structure started looking surprisingly professional. Indeed, the scale overshadowed their original modest patch of ice. If built, it would be a highlight for all of Fairwood Pines, a direct testament to resilience in the face of sabotage. Karen observed this flurry of activity with growing alarm. She realized her salted meltdown had inadvertently galvanized a bigger project. The simple patch of ice she despised was evolving into a legitimate rink with corporate backing. She fumed, searching for new angles to block it, citing noise, traffic, or potential damage. But with the board leaning supportive and a sponsor on board, her usual tactics felt feeble. In mid-December, a wave of volunteers gathered on a chilly Saturday morning to commence construction. The city had granted a short-term permit to close Crescent Court's inner loop, rerouting traffic for the weekend. The parents, armed with power drills, saws, and measuring tapes, laid out the rink's perimeter. Dave Rosen, who had professional carpentry experience, supervised the assembly of wooden boards and corner braces. The kids buzzed with excitement, offering small tasks like handing out screws or painting sponsor logos. Residents not directly involved cheered from the sidewalks, some delivering hot cocoa to keep morale high. Under the watchful eye of the older teens, the scoreboard panel, basically a small chalkboard, took shape, adding a whimsical flair. By dusk, the board stood secure, forming a neat rectangle about 40 feet wide and 70 feet long. Inside, volunteers spread the heavy-duty liner, tacking it to the boards with staples and weatherproof tape. They'd fill it with water the next day, once any final adjustments were made. Overhead, a row of newly installed LED lights twinkled, giving the site a cozy yet official vibe. Even from a distance, it looked like a mini community arena waiting to be iced. Karen hovered on the sidelines, arms crossed. She glared at the wooden boards that marred the pristine look of the cul-de-sac. She snapped photos, presumably planning to lodge complaints about the unsightly structure. But the parents had all necessary approvals. Passers-by told her how excited they were, making it clear public sentiment was firmly behind the rink. Karen retreated, her frustration festering. At the next HOA meeting, Karen erupted in protest. She declared the rink an eyesore, accused the parents of circumventing rightful procedures, and predicted catastrophic injuries. She also ranted about potential flooding once the ice melted in spring. President Margaret Clark, however, pointed out that the board had indeed voted to explore the project, and a majority had approved it. The city provided a limited permit. There was no wrongdoing. Karen then threatened to call the county inspector about improper water drainage, but the parents had already filed a drainage plan with city officials. She alleged unbearable noise, but the board responded that quiet hours would remain enforced after 9 p.m. She demanded the board shut it down or face her resignation. Nobody flinched. The majority recognized the positive community reception and were unwilling to sabotage a widely supported project. Publicly humiliated, Karen stormed out. She sensed her influence waning. She tried emailing the sponsor, Blue Line Sports, insisting they were fueling a dangerous, unauthorized structure, but they dismissed her concerns politely, stating all permits were in order. In a last, desperate attempt, she typed a threatening letter to the parents, claiming they'd regret ignoring serious legal liabilities. The group shrugged it off. They had come too far to be cowed now. 2 days before Christmas, volunteers converged on Crescent Court for the final step, filling the newly constructed rink with water. A city fire hydrant permit allowed them to attach a special hose and carefully flood the rink's lined interior. Onlookers watched in fascination as the water level rose, shimmering under the overhead lights. Children squealed, imagining themselves gliding soon on a smooth, professional surface. It took several hours, with volunteers rotating in shifts to monitor the fill. By nightfall, the rink held a shallow lake of water about 6 inches deep at the center. The temperature was forecast to plummet further, promising a solid freeze over the next 24 to 48 hours. "This is going to be the best Christmas present for our kids," Lisa Kim declared, beaming. Karen lurked behind her curtains, filming the process from afar. She frothed at the sight of such a grand structure overshadowing her salting sabotage. Furious, she began drafting yet another letter to the board, referencing how large the board seemed, how bright the lights were. But the sense of unstoppable momentum battered her efforts. The parents had done everything by the book, leaving her with no easy sabotage route. She clenched her fists, the feeling of defeat pressing in. That night, an Arctic front swept in. Temperatures dropped well below zero, aided by clear skies. By dawn, the water in the rink had hardened into a glassy sheet of ice. Early risers were dazzled by its pristine surface, reminiscent of a mini professional hockey rink. The boards stood stoutly, the LED lights twinkling overhead. Children pressed their faces to windows, squealing for permission to go out. Parents insisted on waiting for final checks. Dave Rosen tested the stability of the boards. Linda Parker placed small foam pads at corners to cushion any falls. Satisfied, they declared it safe. And so began the grand opening of Crescent Court's brand-new, volunteer-built ice rink. Children rushed in, slapping on skates. The older kids zoomed around confidently. Younger ones tottered or used folding chairs as supports. Some families brandished hockey sticks, organizing a casual game. On the sidelines, folding chairs and benches offered seating for those lacing up. It was a scene of pure, wholesome winter fun, something you'd see in a nostalgic holiday movie. The community reveled in this success. Mothers took photos, neighbors chatted excitedly, grandparents reminisced about old outdoor rinks from their youth. The local sponsor's small banner hung proudly on one board, proclaiming Blue Line Sports, proud to support Fairwood Pines. The sabotage incident that had started it all was overshadowed by the joyous spirit now swirling on the ice. Though dismayed by the unstoppable success of the rink, Karen wasn't entirely done. One dark evening, convinced the parents were complacent, she tried once more to sabotage the ice with salt. This time, she carried a smaller container, aiming to do it quickly. She sneaked onto Crescent Court around midnight, intending to dump salt near the entry point where kids first stepped onto the ice. But her plan backfired. The parents had installed motion-sensitive lights in the area. The moment Karen crept near the boards, a bright spotlight snapped on. Startled, she dropped the container, scattering salt on the asphalt, not the ice. A neighbor's dog began barking, and a second light clicked on, revealing Karen's figure plainly. Panicked, she fled before distributing much salt, leaving behind footprints in the snow. The next morning, the salt container was found by volunteers shoveling near the rink's entrance. More suspicious footprints indicated an intruder. Many guessed it was Karen, though again, no direct proof existed. Regardless, the newly installed system had protected the rink. Parents rejoiced that their precaution thwarted the second sabotage attempt. The incident fueled fresh determination to safeguard their community treasure. With winter break in full swing, children from all corners of Fairwood Pines flocked to Crescent Court's ice rink. Parents set up a rotation schedule to oversee sessions, ensuring no overcrowding. The rink's popularity soared, with families traveling from other streets or even adjacent neighborhoods, drawn by the swirling laughter and the mild holiday weather. Some nights saw small impromptu skating parties, with thermoses of hot cocoa and music piped through portable speakers. Karen continued grumbling in corners, claiming the racket of skate blades grated on her nerves, that traffic around the rink was inconvenient. Her repeated official complaints to the HOA board were met with shrugs or polite deflections. The board recognized a wave of positive sentiment behind the rink. Shutting it down would spark widespread outcry. Local media took notice. A small community paper ran a short feature titled From Ruined Patch to Neighborhood Gem. Fairwood Pines' surprising rink rises despite sabotage. The story tactfully avoided naming Karen, but hinted at an individual who'd tried melting the original ice. The coverage praised the parents for uniting to create a safe, joyful facility. For the children, it felt like stardom. Some kids clipped the article to pin in scrapbooks. The joyous atmosphere contrasted sharply with Karen's simmering bitterness. She felt she had lost control over a place that once adhered to a quiet, manicured standard. In the swirl of holiday celebrations, it became increasingly clear that she stood alone in her crusade, overshadowed by the shining success of the new rink. On New Year's Eve, the parents organized a small exhibition skate at dusk. The plan was to ring in the new year a few hours early so younger kids could participate. Homemade flyers circulated, inviting neighbors to Crescent Court for hot cider, festive music, and a gentle skating show. Local teens turned the rink into a stage, planning group figure skating routines, while younger ones wore sparkly costumes. The overhead LED lights gave the ice a magical glow against the dark sky. That evening, families poured in. A folding table offered cider and cookies. Another table displayed children's crafts. The older teens performed a synchronized skate, modest but charming, drawing cheers from the crowd. Timmy and a few friends did a comedic routine, slipping and giggling, delighting onlookers. Overall, the sense of unity soared, reaffirming that the rink had become a beloved fixture. Karen watched from a distance, resentful but drawn to the spectacle. She never approached the group, unwilling to face possible glares. Instead, she lingered in shadows, hearing the laughter and applause. Perhaps for the first time, a pang of regret tugged at her. What if she'd simply joined, or at least tolerated the children's fun, instead of waging a battle? But her pride refused to let her admit wrongdoing. She turned away, returning to her quiet house as fireworks glowed in the horizon, a new year dawning without her input. Buoyed by the rink's success, the HOA formally amended its guidelines to support seasonal recreational projects like the Crescent Court Ice. They recognized the positive press and community satisfaction overshadowed any minor inconveniences. The new bylaw allowed for the rink's annual return, provided parents or sponsors filed basic safety compliance forms. The board cited how it boosted property values by showcasing Fairwood Pines as family-friendly. Margaret Clark, in a public statement, praised the parents. They overcame adversity, from sabotage to logistical challenges, to create a safe, joyous place for children. We're proud to stand behind them. She promised to be open to future proposals that encouraged neighborly interaction. A silent portion of that statement targeted Karen's old attitude. Times were changing, and the HOA no longer championed her brand of rigid uniformity. Hearing about the official endorsement, the parents beamed. They hoped the rink would become an annual tradition. Some joked about adding small bleachers next winter, or even an old scoreboard if funds allowed. A local youth hockey league reached out, inquiring about hosting a charity game once the rink was stable enough. Lisa Kim teased that next year's rink might even have a mini Zamboni if they could find a sponsor. Karen, witnessing these developments, realized her power had waned. The official stance recognized the rink as beneficial. Her sabotage attempts, far from achieving compliance, had fueled an expansion. She mulled over whether to retreat or attempt one last stand. The unstoppable wave of community goodwill left her feeling isolated and resentful, yet increasingly aware she was on the wrong side of the story. Mid-January arrived, and the rink thrived. Crisp temperatures ensured the ice remained solid. Families from neighboring developments visited on weekends, admiring the boards plastered with local sponsor logos and cheerful artwork drawn by kids. The Blue Line Sports banner became a proud emblem, symbolizing how external help and internal resolve merged to create something special. Local librarians arranged a skate and read event one afternoon, setting up a small corner near the boards for storytime breaks. An emergent sense of synergy spread, with different groups orchestrating creative programs around the rink. An art teacher led a snow painting workshop on the edges. A youth group organized a Help Your Neighbor Day, clearing driveways while en route to the rink. All the while, the children's pure joy formed the heart of it. They honed skating skills, forging memories to last a lifetime. Some overcame initial fears, learning from older siblings or gentle neighbors. Laughing parents recounted how it all started from a simple puddle of ice that Karen had salted in the dark. The rink now stood as living proof that negativity could be overshadowed by resilience and collaboration. Karen's presence around the rink was limited to the occasional icy glare from afar. She recognized that each new day etched the rink deeper into neighborhood lore, making it less likely to vanish. Many neighbors, once mild acquaintances, were forging new friendships through this communal spot, further weakening her old stronghold of strict, aloof regulation. Late one afternoon, a boy named Ethan Wells took a hard fall on the ice, striking his knee. Anxious cries rang out, and parents rushed over. The boy was quickly helped off, tears welling in his eyes. Dave Rosen, who had first aid training, provided ice packs and examined Ethan for serious injuries. Fortunately, it was just a bruise, and the parents decided to take him to a minor care clinic for safety. Karen, hearing the commotion from her vantage point, seized the moment. She approached the group, phone in hand. "This is exactly what I warned about," she declared. "Now we have an injury on our hands. You see how this rink endangers children." But Ethan's mother, cradling her son, retorted, "Kids can fall anywhere, on a sidewalk, a playground. That's life. The difference is we have immediate help here." The parents around her nodded. Dave pointed out the protective boards and foam corners minimize severe hazards. Karen retreated, bristling at their lack of condemnation. The incident actually reinforced the parents' preparedness. They had a volunteer sign up for daily supervision, ensuring prompt care for mishaps. Over the next days, Ethan recovered quickly, returning to the rink with extra knee padding. Karen's attempt to exploit his fall ended in a fresh reaffirmation of the rink's communal support. Faced with repeated defeats, Karen found herself losing the impetus to continue her sabotage crusade. The more she railed against the rink, the more she alienated neighbors. Some openly confronted her at the grocery store or on the sidewalk. "Why do you hate seeing kids have fun?" Or, "Aren't you tired of creating drama?" She started skipping HOA meetings, weary of the board's new pro-community stance. A certain loneliness hung around her home. Where once she'd enjoyed the power of dictating small compliance issues, now she found nobody listened. This introspection gnawed at her. Had she made a grave misstep by acting so maliciously? One cold evening, after rummaging through old photos, she recalled her own childhood winters, sledding with friends, an old pond where she first learned to skate. A pang of nostalgia hit, prompting an uncomfortable realization that she'd grown into the type of adult who smothers children's joy. Something akin to regret flickered, though her pride battled it. She wondered if it was too late to change course. Yet Karen's longing for belonging warred with her ingrained desire for neatness, order, and quiet. She found herself at a crossroads. Keep resisting a lost cause, or extend an olive branch. The next weeks would reveal if she could muster the courage to approach the neighbors she'd alienated. Meanwhile, the rink thrived, and winter's deep freeze continued. By late January, some older kids and parents organized a friendly hockey match on the rink, Team Crescent versus Team Pine. Teams formed spontaneously, with each child wearing mismatched gear. Despite the comedic costumes, a wave of excitement coursed through the cul-de-sac. They planned for a Saturday afternoon face-off, complete with a volunteer ref, small goals, and cheering squads lining the boards. The day of the match dawned bright and cold. Families arrived with signs, homemade noisemakers, even a small speaker blasting upbeat tunes. The players warmed up on the ice, chasing pucks with determined zeal. Timmy, typically a timid child, joined as a substitute, receiving plenty of support from older teammates. When the game began, half the neighborhood watched from behind the boards, enthralled by the playful competition. The older kids maneuvered swiftly, while younger skaters wobbled endearingly. Everyone cheered each successful pass or shot. A sense of communal pride pulsed in the air. This was the spirit of winter they wanted, a shining contrast to the sabotage overshadowing the early days. Karen, from her window, heard the lively crowd. Curiosity tugged her. She stepped onto her porch, the distant echo of laughter in the crisp air. For once, she admitted to herself how joyous it sounded. Torn between resentment and longing, she stayed put, arms folded. The echo of a child's cheering called to a deeply buried memory of simpler times, and for a moment, her stern facade cracked, revealing a glint of sorrow for the path she'd taken. Midway through the hockey game, the volunteers brought out hot chocolate for spectators. Emma Garland, a mother of 2 players, spotted Karen standing down the street. Feeling a surge of compassion, Emma waved to her, beckoning with a friendly gesture. Karen hesitated, then took a few tentative steps forward. She recognized some suspicious glances from parents who knew of her sabotage attempts but tried to hold her head high. Emma approached, offering a small cup of steaming cocoa. "We have extra. Thought you might want some warmth." Karen, initially defensive, accepted with a quiet thank you. She hovered near the edge of the crowd, uncertain how to engage. The match raged on, players giggling and stumbling on the ice, while parents hollered light-hearted cheers. A hush fell whenever a shot soared near the net, followed by whoops of triumph if it scored. Karen found herself involuntarily smiling at a particularly skillful pass by a teen. Despite everything, the scene's warmth tugged at her defenses. She caught glimpses of Timmy in his mismatched gear, determinedly skating behind the puck. No one seemed to pay Karen much mind, busy with the game. She sipped her cocoa, glimpsing a communal bond she'd rarely felt. Though she didn't stay long, the moment left an impression. Emma's small kindness softened her mood. On her walk home, Karen wrestled with guilt that she had tried to wreck this joyous place. She considered how acceptance might feel if only she were brave enough to apologize. But that step still seemed enormous. Days later, Karen took a timid step toward atonement. She slipped a small envelope into the Patterson family's mailbox. Inside lay a handwritten note. "To the parents of Crescent Court, I've said hurtful things about your ice rink and try to end it. I realize now I let my personal frustrations blind me to the happiness it brings. I know I can't undo the harm, especially the salting of the ice. I am deeply sorry. If you'll allow it, I'd like to make a contribution toward the rink's maintenance or improvements. Brenda Ainsworth." While no mention was made of her name, Karen, the signature was clear. The next morning, James Patterson discovered the note. He shared it with the group that had championed the rink. Reactions varied. Some insisted it might be a ruse, too little too late. Others, like Emma Garland, believed it marked genuine remorse. They decided to accept the apology in principle, though they remained cautious. Quietly, the parents discussed a potential path forward, letting Karen help with a small project, maybe painting or cleaning the boards, as a sign of good faith. But they agreed to proceed slowly, ensuring no immediate confrontation. Word spread to the children that Ms. Ainsworth might be sorry. The older kids were skeptical. Timmy, more naive, believed in second chances. The stage was set for a possible reconciliation. February ebbed into March, with temperatures fluctuating. On warmer days, the rink's edges grew slushy, only to refreeze at night. Maintenance involved nightly reflooding or smoothing with makeshift scrapers. Still, each day the rink remained viable felt like borrowed time. The children savored every last opportunity to skate, suspecting the ice would vanish by month's end. Blue Line Sports, pleased by the positive coverage, donated a small scoreboard for the final weeks, adding a professional flair. The kids posted playful scores from daily matches, even tracking personal goals or assists. As the sun lingered longer, the joyous chaos of the rink peaked, culminating in one last big farewell skate that parents planned for mid-March. Meanwhile, Karen lingered on the periphery, occasionally offering a polite wave or greeting. Some neighbors reciprocated stiffly, not fully ready to forgive. But her presence no longer sparked open hostility. She no longer tried to sabotage the rink. in subtle ways. The community's warmth chipped away at her old bitterness. An uneasy sense of growth took root in her heart, even as she struggled with regret that she'd nearly destroyed something so cherished. As mid-March arrived, a cold snap provided one last solid freeze. The parents declared a weekend extravaganza, the Rink's grand finale. They planned a day of mini-tournaments, figure skating showcases, and a final group photo on the ice. Flyers pinned to mailboxes invited everyone in Fairwood Pines. A potluck arrangement was set: soup, chili, and snacks to keep folks warm. The morning of the finale dawned crisp, the rink's surface freshly groomed. Families poured in, bringing fold-out tables loaded with dishes. The children, decked in bright scarves and gloves, took the ice in shifts. A local trio played acoustic covers near the boards. The atmosphere was akin to a small festival, bridging the entire neighborhood. Karen watched from across the street, uncertain if she was welcome. Then she noticed a quiet gesture. Emma Garland waved again, motioning for her to join. Summoning courage, Karen walked over. The crowd parted slightly, acknowledging her presence with polite nods. She stood near the boards, sipping a cup of soup, listening to laughter all around. Timmy spotted Karen, paused in mid-glide, and offered a shy wave. She gave a small, hesitant smile in return. In that fleeting moment, the culmination of an entire winter's drama felt condensed. Her sabotage, the parents' defiance, the children's unwavering joy. She realized how small her vendetta seemed in the face of such genuine camaraderie. During the afternoon's highlight, a friendly figure skating show, some older kids performed a modest routine, culminating in comedic spins. Applause followed. Then Emma took the microphone, addressing the crowd. Before we end, I want to mention someone we haven't always seen eye to eye with, Ms. Ainsworth. She's expressed remorse for the troubles earlier this season. In the spirit of community, we'd like to invite her to share a few words if she wants. A hush fell. Karen stood stiffly, scanning the faces. Some watchers wore skeptical expressions. Others seemed open. With a trembling sigh, she stepped forward, the mic offered by Emma. I'm not good at this, Karen began, voice cracking. But I owe you all an apology. I acted out of frustration, losing sight of how important this rink was to you. Seeing how it's brought happiness, I regret what I did. I hope I can earn your understanding over time. No thunderous applause followed, just a quiet, respectful silence. Then Timmy, gliding up to the boards, clapped gently. A handful of others joined in. Karen felt tears prick her eyes at even that small acceptance. She stepped back, returning the mic. Emma patted her shoulder, whispering a kind, "Thank you for speaking." The final show proceeded, weaving a sense of closure into the day's festivities. Following the grand finale, the weather warmed significantly. Within a week, the rink's ice softened irreversibly. Parents carefully drained the water, removing the liner to store for next winter. The boards came down piece by piece, leaving Crescent Court's asphalt bare once more. The transformation was poignant, from a sabotage patch of ice to a mini professional grade rink, now returned to everyday suburban pavement. For the children, the memory endured. They recalled the squeaks of skate blades, the swirling snow under LED lights, and a sense of triumph over adversity. Many families vowed to resurrect the rink next year, hoping for an annual tradition. With the HOA's new guidelines and sponsor support, the future looked bright for winter skating in Fairwood Pines. Karen watched the dismantling with complex emotions, relief that the daily noise would quiet, but also a strange sadness. She saw the genuine bond formed over the rink, a bond she'd once tried to break. And a small part of her felt pangs of longing for a time when she might have joined in, had she not let her desire for total uniformity dominate. She retreated to her home, unsure whether she'd remain in Fairwood Pines or move on from the place that had both exposed and reshaped her. As spring flowers bloomed, neighbors shared stories of the winter's rink. Kids bragged about learning new moves or how they played in the epic final match. Parents teased that next time they might add a scoreboard or host a charity event. The local hardware store offered to sponsor new boards if the old ones wore out. Blue Line Sports, thrilled by the success, asked if they could display pictures of the mini rink in their store. They even posted a short social media reel showing the project's evolution, from a sabotage puddle to a thriving community attraction. The reel garnered positive reactions, with strangers commenting on how they wish their neighborhoods had something similar. Meanwhile, Karen remained inconspicuous. She no longer sat on the HOA compliance committee, having quietly relinquished her post. Some rumored she might move, while others claimed she was trying to mend fences. Indeed, occasionally, she'd wave to passers-by or help pick up trash near the old rink site. Small gestures that signaled a reluctant shift from adversary to bystander. Life in Fairwood Pines resumed its normal rhythm. But whenever a conversation turned to winter's highlights, the saga of the children's ice rink and Karen's attempt to destroy it emerged as a testament to the community's resilience. In those retellings, the final moral always shone. Negativity might spark conflict, but collective kindness can build something far grander than the original dream. One late afternoon, Caroline Patterson strolled through Crescent Court. She paused at the center, recalling how just weeks ago it had been a bustling rink. The asphalt was ordinary now, cars occasionally circling. Yet she felt echoes of children's laughter in the air. She remembered how heartbreak turned to determination, culminating in a big success. Karen appeared unexpectedly, crossing the street with cautious steps. Caroline offered a faint smile. Karen hesitated, then approached. "It's strange seeing it empty, isn't it?" she said softly. Caroline nodded. A moment passed in awkward silence. Karen inhaled. "I truly want to say again, I regret how I acted. I guess I got lost in wanting everything perfect. But perfect for me meant bland, not for the kids." Caroline studied her face, searching for sincerity. "I appreciate you saying that. It was tough, especially for the kids. But in a way, your actions spurred something bigger. We built a real rink. We came together. I'm not saying it was good you did that, only that it ended up forging stronger bonds." Karen looked away, tears glistening. "I'm glad. If I could help next year, I'd like to. Even if just hauling boards or something." Caroline's surprise was evident, but she nodded gently. "We'll see. If you're sincere, there's always room for more hands." They exchanged a tentative handshake, each aware bridging the past would take time. But at least the door had cracked open for a fresh start. Time flowed on, cycling through bright spring, sun-soaked summer, and crisp autumn. Children resumed school, tried other sports, but occasionally reminisced about the rink. Some parents started discussing the next winter's improvements. Maybe sturdier boards, a small penalty box for hockey, or a coat of paint on the boards to make them more festive. A year after the fiasco, the residents of Crescent Court found themselves anticipating the first snowfall with excitement. They'd secured an updated permit from a city. Blue Line Sports reaffirmed their sponsorship. Even a local lighting company offered to upgrade the LED system. The plan was to outdo the prior year's rink, making it a central attraction for the entire region. On that brisk December morning, as flurries drifted onto the asphalt, children peeked out windows, recalling last winter's magic. Parents rummaged for the boards in storage, preparing for construction. And among them, though still uncertain, Karen indicated she might join. She told Dave Rosen she'd help hold a board in place or pass nails if needed, a small token of contrition. Thus, the epic story came full circle. Where once a petty act, salting a tiny ice patch, had threatened to crush children's joy, it instead ignited a movement of collaboration, culminating in a professional-grade rink that brightened an entire neighborhood. In Fairwood Pines, that winter tradition would endure as an enduring tribute to how a community can overcome even the frostiest negativity, forging unity on the sturdy foundation of laughter, compassion, and the swirling grace of skates on ice.